Today's episode, we're going to discuss maybe getting some powder burners to cross over into the PCP world and vice versa. Maybe some PCP users want to get their hands and cross over into the other world. And what do we expect each way? What's the differences in power? What can we expect for accuracy, one versus the other? And what's the fun factor? And the cost. These are all important issues that we all have on our mind because most firearm users really are under the assumption that PCPs are low power. And a lot of PCP users are under the assumption that PCPs are just as powerful as a firearm. Both of those are myths. Both of those are not true. A PCP will never be in the same realm as a firearm, and that's due to mechanical limitations. Physics involved simply are not there to get that kind of and carry that kind of energy. It's simply not there. So we're stuck within a box or realm that we're stuck in by physics. The firearm world, on the other hand, isn't so much in that box because they can change powders, loads, whatever they need to do to increase power. And that's where they'll always have it. Now I'm going to give you some examples of power differences, and hopefully this helps you out a little bit. If we take like the standard 22 version of a PCP, most of us have a power, from 22 to 33 foot-pounds of energy. We've all seen higher than that, of course, but generally it's in that realm. Where if you take a 22 in a powder burner, you're usually around 137 foot-pounds at the muzzle. And they'll carry that to about 91 foot-pounds at over 100 yards. So put that in perspective. And that's also carrying a lot heavier of a grain. So definitely a lot more power, a lot more stopping force. Now, if you go with a 22 Win Mag in a powder burner, you're carrying 314 foot-pounds at the muzzle and over 153 foot-pounds at over 100 yards. So clearly you can see the big difference and the limitations start to show themselves. But what happens when we get into bigger caliber PCPs versus a firearm? And a lot of you firearm users may be surprised at the power that a PCP does make. And I'm sure a lot of you PCP users will be surprised at the power the PCP doesn't make compared to a firearm. Let's take the 50 caliber hammer, the most powerful production 50 cal PCP in the world currently. Now that has a 1055 FPS, and that's using a 200 grain, and that carries 495 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. That's a lot, right? If you're a PCP user, you go, wow, that's a lot. It's almost 500 foot-pounds. Well, let's put that in perspective with a 50 cal BMG in the firearm world. That carries 10 to 15,000 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. That's right. That's with a 32-inch barrel. And to put that in a little more perspective, at 2,500 yards, yes, 2,500 yards, it's still carrying 850 feet per second at 2,500 yards and still producing 1,045 foot-pounds. That's a lot of foot-pounds. That's crazy. What does it carry for feet per second at the barrel, the muzzle? Almost 3,000 FPS. Almost 3,000, not quite, depending on your load. So what happens what about a 357? 357, in the firearm world, a 357 carries 539 foot-pounds of energy. Now let's take the AEA Terminator. The Terminator carries 160 foot-pounds. That's a 379 foot-pound difference. That's a big difference. And that's the AEA is using an 82 grain at 950 feet per second. But it doesn't compare, of course, to the Firearm. Well, let's go with the new Zeus. Let's take the Zeus. It's big, it's bad, right? Most powerful PCP on the planet, bar none. What's it produce for foot-pounds? 1,500 foot-pounds at the muzzle. But of course, it's propelled by air, and that drops off very, very quickly the farther you go out. So do we compare the Zeus? Should we compare it to the BMG, which is 15,000 foot-pounds? Well, no. Let's compare it to a shotgun because, well, it's a 72 caliber. So if we take a 439 grain slug, that carries 2,363 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle and 1,560 FPS. Okay? Versus the 1,500 foot-pounds of the Zeus and 920 FPS of the Zeus. And the Zeus is using a 750 grain, but it still doesn't carry as much energy. There's a big difference. And to put that into perspective, if we take even the bird shot of a 12 gauge, this has a velocity of 1,325. That's bird shot. 1,325 feet per second with bird shot, with a lot of power behind it. So this is putting it into perspective. Now, so it becomes very clear the firearms are very powerful. And PCPs are powerful also. Plenty powerful enough. More powerful than I think a lot of you powder burners out there, and I'm one of them, ever thought they were. When I got into PCPs, I had no clue that they were this powerful. But what are PCPs? What's really great about a PCP? Well, for the most part, they're pretty quiet. They're all quiet compared to a firearm. And they're very fun. They have a high fun factor, and they're fantastic for target use. Fantastic. They're great for hunting in big calibers, in ethical calibers. But you have to be a lot closer. You can't take a shot from a far distance like you shouldn't, unless you're really, really skilled. But you have to remember you're losing a lot of energy 3 times as fast with a PCP. PCPs are fun, they're awesome, and they're pricey. Now, of course, when we get into the firearm realm, things can get pricey quickly also. But cost effectiveness, it's definitely more cost effective to go firearm. But a lot of people out there can't get a firearm. They either can't pass a background check or they have issues where they just can't. Or maybe they're just not comfortable with one, and maybe it's a little too powerful and it might scare them a little bit, and that's understandable. So PCPs open up a great world for powder burners because, well, they're less expensive for the most part, unless you're going crazy, but they're less expensive. The ammo's generally less expensive. You can have a lot of fun. It's a great hobby. You can take it to the range. Most ranges I go to allow them anyhow. And you're still able to hit targets out to 100 yards. And most ranges that I go to are 100-yard ranges. So it's very fun. It's inexpensive. It will sharpen your skills. If you're a firearm user and you are using a PCP, it will definitely sharpen your skills. Because you're really going to learn how to precisely place each shot. And it's fun. They're easier to use. They're less stress. You don't hear cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching as much as you do with the firearm every time you pull the trigger. There are some downsides to it. There are some extra hidden costs, such as air pumps and compressors, things of that nature. Ammunition can be a crapshoot finding out which one your particular PCP likes. But for most of us, that's the fun of it. And the testing aspect is a lot of fun too. So whatever world you're crossing into, good luck and have fun with it. That's all I can say. Recoil on a firearm is generally more in the shoulder than what a PCP puts out to the front. A 12 gauge puts over 35 foot-pounds against your shoulder. Of course, it's a big area, so it's not like but it's quite a bit of foot-pounds going against your shoulder. It's got quite a bit of kick. You need to learn how to control that. We don't have that problem with PCPs. A lot of people will use a Carnivore 30 brake barrel, and it kicks hard as a brake barrel. It's got a gas piston that's slamming back, and it's got some kick to it. But compared to a firearm, that's nothing. So keep that in mind also. There is an experience and a learning curve going each way, but let's keep the fun of it. Let's not bash either side, because we have a lot to learn from the firearm world, and the firearm world has a lot to learn from us. So let's all stick together, have fun, stay safe out there, guys. This is MMB Airgun Review, PCP Review, and I'll be talking to you soon.